Circumnavigating circumcision, or how I learned to not trust the government or shut my mouth. We, in our eternal quest for the fabled land of equality or equity or both, in our lost mirror maze of confused altruism, have forgotten to thread the middle path and consider all as individual beings of equal worth and as such deserving of equal protection under the law. We are lost in the deadpan idea that a society should be judged on how it treats its girls and women, disregarding how it treats its men and how it treats its boys. The mythology of the ever-expanding and all-devouring patriarchy defiling Gaia in her beautiful state of true, balanced neutrality and compassion is all-encompassing and drowns the discourse in a septic pool of stagnant rot. It does not matter how boys and men are treated, because boys and men are privileged by default and oppressive by nature, and so all our focus and all our altruism ought to be focused on the well-being of girls and women, as they are the ones who are struggling to get by in this glorious and nurturing world we would have inhabited were it not ravaged, raped and defiled by the patriarchy. It is world and mythology building on a scale rivaling the fantastic world building of Tolkien. Both a world and a view of the world built from the ground up by ideologues with an axe to grind and a chocolate chip cookie on their shoulders. Ideologues with fingers deeply embedded in every pie there is. Ideologues of such cleverness and such clarity of vision that they have succeeded in painting the world in vibrant and stunningly nuanced black and white, making it so easy to understand as men bad, women good. This, of course, leads us onwards onto the left-hand path, straying from the middle path, easily turning the whole shebang on the head. Of course, men also struggle, but women struggle more, and men struggle because of men, and women struggle because of men, and more men benefit, even if men struggle, and no women benefit, even the women that benefit do not benefit, and so, really, since men struggle less and women struggle more, we ought to focus our attention on how women are doing. An incredible quest and unbelievable mission guiding us towards equality by considering women and women first and foremost in the dilapidated duplexes of equal rights. And here come the loud wailing of the air raid sirens. Here come the death and the destruction. Here come the shades of shame from time immemorial. The shaming of men daring to consider the human rights of boys and of men as of being equal worth to the human rights of girls and of women. What do you mean, the human rights of men and boys? Human rights are human rights and are not gendered, you filthy misogynist jackhammer rapist you foul basement-dwelling sexual assault coordinator you. You are scum, and you better believe it. Strange and odd then, is it not, that male babies do not have the right to bodily autonomy and genital integrity, whereas female babies do. Strange that the feminist insanity consider an adult woman's choice to cosmetically alter her genitals for appearance and nothing but appearance a sign of female subjugation to men, whereas a baby boy being genitally mutilated by the wish of his parents is not a sign of male subjugation. Strange that the right to have ownership over one's own body do not extend to boys but only extend to girls. My body, my choice is the sentence and the rhetoric of choice, for women and for women only. Excepting, yet again, if women choose to do with their bodies and lives what the feminist orthodoxy does not approve of. His body, his choice does not exist. For religious freedom, for the glory of suppression of sexuality, of male sexuality, the beast of the revelation, the foul harbinger of doom and of the end of the world. One would be inclined to believe that any and all should be protected from being forcibly mutilated. One would be inclined to believe that the quest for bodily autonomy, the my body, my choice rhetoric of ages upon ages, should also extend to the bodies of boys and of men. Alas, this is not so. The realm of chaos which we inhabit has deemed it not so. The lawful protection of female bodies do not extend to male bodies. Female genital mutilation is bad. Male genital mutilation, well, that is just religious freedom, don't you know? And here we go, and there it goes. Our notions of equal treatment going down the drain again in silver-tongued and lopsided madness, posing as egalitarian concerns for the religious rights of the parents of the child, not of the child itself. Strange that the religious freedom of someone should override the bodily autonomy of someone else entirely. A child is its own being, not merely an extension of its parents. As such, one would not be amiss to believe that the religious freedom of the parents ends where the body of the child begins, that the religious freedom of the child begins where his body begins. This is very much the case in regard to girls, but not in regard to boys. So strange and so curious, so weird and unheard of in this age of supposed equal treatment. Of course, I am aware that the madness of male genital mutilation in the USA is not only a product of religion, that it is an issue in and of itself. I choose to focus on the religious aspects in this ramble, as that is the reason given for the legal mutilation of boys in my own country. Last year, I contacted the Norwegian Department of Equality. Yeah, that does sound slightly Orwellian, does it not? Who decides the meaning of equality? Feminist ideologues. Inquiring amongst other things as to why in the world genital mutilation of boys was still allowed, when it is illegal and has been since 1995, with a maximum prison sentence of 8 years for anyone caught doing so, to mutilate the genitals of girls. Now, I consider 1995 to be far too late in regards to making it illegal to mutilate girls. In my opinion, mutilating children should not be allowed at all. It is odd, then, that this reasonable approach to things, that is, don't fucking mutilate the genitals of children you worm-licking ass-hats, should still be subject to debate where boys are concerned, but not where girls are concerned. It is incredibly strange to me that we allow the mutilation of one gender at birth, but not the other, under the pretense of religious freedom. It is incredibly strange to me that parents of baby girls do not have the right to ritually mutilate their daughters, whereas the parents of baby boys have the right to ritually mutilate their sons. One would almost be inclined to believe that the well-being of girls is considered far more important than the well-being of boys. But that can't be it, can it? Not in this land of supposed equality, where all are just as equal as the other, and the other is sometimes more equal than the all. But we don't mention that. That surely cannot be it in this land of equality, where men and boys apparently have it far better than girls and women. Well, the Department of Equality, after I sent 2 follow-up emails requesting a reply because they took their sweet time in replying, sent me an email linking to a governmental hearing on the issue from 2011. Please see link down below. That is 7 years prior to the year my email was sent. 7 years. Let that sink in a bit. After reading the hearing they supplied me with, I sent them another email wherein I uttered my dissatisfaction with their reply, their conclusion and the entire goddamned hearing. In short, legalizing genital mutilation of baby boys and not baby girls is not considered gender discrimination. It is a question of religious freedom, which, to my rupturing ears, fracturing mind and gobble-smacked eyes, sounds an awful lot like rhetorical bullshit to justify gender discrimination. They replied to my follow-up email with another email in which they told me that they did not wish to hear from or speak with me anymore. In short, I got dumped and subsequently ghosted by a governmental department whose funding is very much dependent on my taxes. They stuck their fingers in their ears and sang la 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 la, pretending that I did not exist and that they could not hear me. I wish I was making this shit up, but I am not. Now, what first struck me about this hearing is the fact that every single argument they made for still allowing the mutilation of baby boys could just as easily be used to justify the mutilation of baby girls. I will go through a few points in the hearing, translated from Norwegian to the best of my abilities. I will not translate the entire thing, but that which sticks out the most to me. Quote, "Today the expenses of circumcision is funded by the public, but there are few possibilities of getting it done at a hospital because the procedure is not prioritized. Some procedures are done at private hospitals, paid for by the parents themselves, 3,500 to 9,500 Norwegian kroners." End quote. Now, this alone is frightening. Paid for by the public of course means paid for by our taxes. Why anyone's taxes should be spent paying for unnecessary ritual mutilation is beyond me. In particular since it is a fairly uncommon practice over here in the frozen wastes of Norway. I would much rather see it completely abolished than just uncommon practice, but that does not matter much. What matters here is that I am paying for boys to be mutilated. My money is spent mutilating boys, and I am not okay with this. Quote, "The department expresses concern that this situation causes many parents to choose non-professional help. Both Model A and B therefore contain a plan for full financing of circumcision from the public, as it, in principle, also is today." End quote. How horrible this is, that the current model is so much of a travesty that it causes the parents to seek unprofessional help to get the circumcision done. Instead of just, not mutilating the penises of little boys, we make the public pay for it, so that the mutilation at the very least is done professionally. And free of charge. Ha! What a fantastic idea. Strange, however, that mutilating girls is not funded by the public, even though one would be inclined to believe, should this logic be followed through with, that keeping it illegal only leads to the girls being mutilated unprofessionally, as opposed to being mutilated by a professional. But, better to be professionally mutilated than unprofessionally mutilated when one is a boy. Very compassionate this. Very humanitarian. Quote, "The Ombudsman is of the opinion that it is important that boys who are circumcised get qualified treatment and is followed up by qualified healthcare professionals." End quote. Instead of, just not mutilating them to begin with. Instead of just, not allowing religious beliefs to be of more importance than bodily autonomy and genital integrity. Again, where boys are concerned. Parents of girls are not allowed to practice their religion faithfully. Parents of boys are. Lucky them. Quote, "Circumcision of boys cannot, after the view of the Ombudsman, be considered a medically necessary operation, but a ritual act. Circumcision of boys are accepted as part of the religious freedom of our society. If the government should take responsibility to finance this practice, because demands that the parents pay for it themselves might lead to unprofessional circumcision, is a difficult question. Basically, religious practice such as circumcision should be paid for by the ones who wish to get it done. It is difficult to imagine that parents wish to gamble with the health of their children to save money. With the right to religious practice, one could argue that it also follows an obligation in regards to society and in regards to the rights of others. For example, the rights of children to not be inflicted pain or trauma upon. It may seem stigmatizing and prejudiced to suspect parents who practice ritual circumcision of not maintaining the health of their children, without documenting that this is the case today." End quote. Oh boy, where to begin? Firstly, it is not considered medically necessary. It is a ritual act, accepted as part of the religious freedom of our society. Okay, why is it only upon boys this grand and glorious freedom of religion is inflicted so viciously and brutally? Why does not this religious freedom extend to the parents of girls who wish to ritually circumcise their daughters? After all, thinking that this would harm their daughters would be both stigmatizing and prejudiced. How in the festering cesspit of filth and doublethink is this not clear and obvious gendered double standards? Everything quoted above could just as easily be used to justify the public financing of female genital mutilation. But nope, that would be foul misogyny. That would be mutilation, not circumcision. That would be hatred of and attempted control and coercion of girls and women. Also, gamble with the health of their children. It's that difficult to imagine when they willingly allow their children to be mutilated. Is that not gambling with the health of their children by default, mutilating them for no reason other than religion? And children do have the right to not be inflicted pain and trauma upon. Excepting boys, whose pain and trauma may be inflicted as long as there are religious reasons to do so. Remember, religion supersedes the rights of baby boys to genital integrity, bodily autonomy, and an infancy without pain and trauma. But the genital integrity and bodily autonomy of girls supersedes any and all religious freedom. Girls are precious and must be protected. Boys are not precious and do not deserve protection. And if anyone interjects with the old argument of female genital mutilation and male genital mutilation being different, I will only say this. Mutilating the genitals of children for religious reasons are bad, okay? Cutting people's genitals without their permission is bad, okay? Mutilating children are bad. Why in the salty, substandard gates of hell does this need to be spelled out? Why in the world is it so difficult to understand that boys and girls both ought to have the right to keep their genitals intact and their bodies unspoiled, religion or no? Quote, "The Ombudsman enforces the laws in regards to discrimination and keeps watch that, amongst other things, public officials work determined, methodically and actively to promote the purpose of the laws. In order for such discrimination to occur, there are terms that, for example, a practice treats someone worse than others based on one or more reasons for discrimination, for example gender and or ethnicity, without there being a legitimate reason for the discrimination." End quote. I would dare say that a lawful practice that allows for the mutilation of the genitals of one gender for nothing but ritual reasons, but at the same time disallows the mutilation of the genitals of the other gender for ritual reasons, are very clearly treating one gender worse than the other under law. I would dare make the claim that this is gendered discrimination of boys written into law. I would dare to make the radical claim that both boys and girls should have the right to genital integrity and bodily autonomy, and that granting that right to only one gender is institutionalized sexism, telling us nothing but this: girls are more important than boys. End of story. Quote, "The practice of ritual circumcision of boys are debated, and some hold the opinion that the practice should be forbidden, amongst other things because it raises questions as to whether or not this practice discriminates against boys on the basis of sex. The Ombudsman for Children wish for a lower age limit in regards to circumcision, which protect the children. Today, only circumcision of girls and women are illegal." End quote. Well, yes, it does discriminate based on gender. Don't believe me? Flip the genders. Make it illegal to genitally mutilate boys, but legal to genitally mutilate girls. Does that seem discriminatory to you? Does that seem as though it is unfair, as though it protects one gender but not the other gender? If yes, why is it impossible to see this when the genders are flipped back to their original position in the flip-flop experiment, in the old switcheroo? Could it be the empathy gap once again? Could it possibly be, like stated before, that we quite simply do not care for boys and men as we care for girls and women, that boys and men are treated as lesser human beings? To me, this is evident, considering there even is a debate on whether or not baby penises should be cut, considering there even is a debate on whether or not this is gendered discrimination. Were it flipped, the answers would be clear, bright as the confounded face of God himself, and self-evident. Since it is boys, however, we need to consider the religious rights of the parents before the rights of the boy. I know, I am repeating myself. Clearly, I have to. There is no way for the boy to comprehend religion, no way for him to choose his own religion, or lack thereof this early in life. It is forced upon him through bodily trauma. Here's your religion, boy. Snip snip. Stop crying and be grateful. Welcome to your life. First we hurt you physically, then we dehumanize you socially. Hope you'll have a good run. Just remember to not complain about it, foul rapist in waiting that you are. Quote, "The Ombudsman do not know of any European states that forbid ritual circumcision of boys today, or that the practice is considered as a possible violation of human rights." End quote. Yes, and everyone else is doing it argument from the government. Need I say more? I also find it very peculiar that it is not considered a possible violation of human rights. From what I have understood, it is a very basic human right to not get needlessly mutilated. I assume this only goes for girls then. Human rights are human rights, but some humans are more human than others, and boys? Nah, they don't need to keep the most sensitive part of their penis. Not to mention that the foreskin is fused to the glans until early puberty, which means that the foreskin needs to be torn loose from the glans before the actual cutting is done. Want to lose sleep for a good few nights? Go watch a video of the penis of an infant boy being mutilated. Absolutely astonishing, this lack of basic empathy. Absolutely mind-bogglingly absurd that we do not extend the same rights to genital integrity to boys that we do to girls, whilst claiming equal rights for all. Mutilating girls bad, mutilating boys good, because religious freedom trumps all, even the right to an unmutilated body, as long as the victim is a boy. Because the vulva is holy and the penis is unholy. Because we care for girls and not for boys. I wonder, were someone to drag a 15-year-old boy kicking and screaming into the doctor's office, strap him to the table and then proceed to brutally and savagely remove his foreskin with no anesthetic, against his wishes, would that be considered abuse? Quote, "In both these proposals for a solution, the department proposes a law that the regional health services shall conduct ritual circumcision as a health service." End quote. Our public health service shall perform unnecessary religious rituals, all paid for by the taxpayers. There's nothing wrong with mutilating baby boys. The public shall pay for mutilation. When will the public be forced to pay for the mutilation of baby girls then, I wonder? Or may we, maybe, perchance and perhaps, just stop fucking mutilating the genitals of babies whose consent to the procedure or to the religion cannot be given? May we, maybe, perhaps and perchance, treat girls and boys equally, giving them equal rights to bodily autonomy and genital integrity? Or is that simply too much to ask from the Department of Equality? Is it also too much to ask that this religious freedom be granted to the baby boys in question, so that they may choose their own religion, or lack thereof, when they are old enough to understand both religion and the procedure of circumcision, thereby granting them the possibility to make their own choice in regards to the intactness of their genitals? The foreskin is supposed to be there, right where it is, protecting the glans. The glans is supposed to be internal, you twat waffle. Quote, the Ombudsman is positive to the proposal if a public health service reduces the real risk for damage and trauma for the boys. There is a real damage and a real trauma done already. Removing the foreskin is damaging. It damages the body. It amputates part of the body. It removes a part of the penis. This is damaging to the body. This is damaging to the boys. There is trauma to the body. There is the ripping of the foreskin, the cutting of a penis attached to a boy who is attached to a table, often without an anesthetic. Why do I need to spell this obvious fact out? Are our politicians of a special breed? Are they insane? Have they no grasp of words, reality, and of the male body? Do they exist in a different sphere of reality? Are they the Anunnaki, grand reptilian overlords with no empathetic understanding of human beings, be that human being a boy and thus less biologically important for the continued production of human drones? Are they blind and deaf? Clearly they are not mute. Something resembling coherent words and sentences seem to slip from their mouths and serpent tongues ever so often. But blind and deaf? Perhaps and perchance. At least they are blind and deaf when their subjects are of a male persuasion, wielders of the horrid attack cocks and swingers of the giant, pendulous, testosterone-poisoning ballistic assault balls. Quote, on the other hand, we cannot see that there are any documentation that the risk is less when the boys are circumcised at the health services than if they are circumcised through private solutions. No, the risk probably stays the same, you know, the risk of bleeding to death, or the risk of severely damaging the penis, removing more than planned, or the risk of infections. See, why in the world would one deem it safe, proper, and quite alright to have an open wound in a diaper, in close proximity to urine and feces? Why should it not be considered more or less risky to have a penis with an open wound nesting comfortably atop a bed of piss and shit? These risks, and more, are not considered a problem for the powers that be. Boys don't need safety. Hell, just mutilate them at birth. That'll teach them humility. That'll teach them to know both God and the government, the biggest G's in the life of boys and men outside of the G-spot, in front of whose hallowed and sacred countenance you shall learn your place and bend the knee in subdued submission. Quote, the Ombudsman sees that Model A, which proposes that people who are not medical doctors should be able to perform the procedure, are in line with the religious practice such as it is today. Such a practice should be carried on if there does not exist any documentation that says otherwise. The Ombudsman also agrees that there should be demands in regards to competence when people other than medical doctors perform the procedure. End quote. Ah yes, religious people who are not medical doctors can mutilate their baby boys because religious people who are not medical doctors have done so in the past. At the very least, they agree that there should be some demand in regards to competence. How very humanitarian and compassionate of them. See, you may be mutilated by a non-professional, as long as the non-professional mutilator has some competency in regards to mutilating babies. We can't just let any riff-raff off the streets mutilate babies. They need competency in regards to mutilation, goddammit. Bring on the professional mutilators. Personally, I have dubbed the professional mutilator Mutilator, wielder of the sword of the desert sands. Quote, The department further proposes that the access for other people than medical doctors to perform ritual circumcision should only be allowed when the child is below 2 months of age, because the risk for complications are then reduced. The practice, such as it is today, varies somewhat." End quote. I can't be reading this right. This can't be right. Surely I am stuck in some comatose state, or lost in perpetual limbo, doomed to wade through shit until the rapture, so that I can pay for my multitude of sins as well as the sins of my ancestors. Surely this is me forced to do penance. This is the government telling us, if I read this correctly, that children under 2 months of age should be mutilated by non-professionals. Because that is very considerate. Remember, boys don't have feelings and don't really matter much in the grand scheme of things. First we hurt them, then we hurt them some more when they grow up so they learn their place in the world. The rights of boys to a whole and unmolested body is of less importance than the religion of their parents, which may or may not be the religion of the boys later in life. The government agrees with this, of course. Boys are subject to cruelty authorized by the state. Girls are free from this cruelty. This, however, has nothing whatsoever to do with gender discrimination, of course. There is, after all, only one gender to consider when it comes to discrimination, and that gender is female. Once again, reverse the genders in this, and see if you do not come to the conclusion that this is gendered discrimination through and through. If you do reach that conclusion after flipping the genders, why is this only visible after flipping the genders? Could it be that we do not offer the same level of empathy to boys that we do to girls, and later that we do not offer the same level of empathy towards men as we do towards women? Nope, of course not. Because something patriarchy theory and severe oppression that allows me my genital integrity. At least men don't have to worry about the air conditioning, you sexist scumbag you. I know, the air conditioning one is a pet peeve of mine. It just really boggles my mind and shows the astonishing level of first world problems evident in feminist orthodoxy. Quote, "This question should therefore be discussed closer with those belief systems that practice circumcision later than the proposed age limit." End quote. Why yes, of course it should, instead of, not considering it a violation of human rights. My body, my choice only matters when it is a female body. A male has no choice over his own body. We must consider the feelings of the mutilators before the feelings of the boy. Quote, "The question of anesthetic in regards to the procedure is a controversial topic. Research on the importance of anesthetic is not unambiguous. Therefore, it is important here as well that the department invite the religions affected by this to a consulting dialogue in regards to the question." End quote. Yeah, no, pain is only pain and it toughens you up. Should I happen to go into surgery in the near future for whatever reason, I will demand them not use any anesthetic. I will also demand a Buddhist monk perform the procedure instead of a licensed professional. Hell, I'll just ask them to remove my spleen and one of my kidneys while they're at it. Don't need them, I believe. Just take one of my lungs as well. As long as it is an unprofessional doing it, it should be quite alright. And I'll fucking demand that the public pay for it. Fuck, come to think of it, perhaps I should demand the public pay for my various and completely unnecessary facial piercings as well as my tattoos. Why the hell not? We're all mad here after all, and my religion of choice dictate I pierce and decorate myself with sharp metal objects and sew vibrant colors into my skin for the fun of it. What religion is that, you ask? Well, I don't know yet, but I'm sure I'll come up with something convincing before long. My religious freedom and all that. Why should not my self-imposed mutilation be covered by the public? Where is my free religious freedom? Quote, "The department's proposal touches upon a legal practice in Norway today. When the department in this way interferes with and tries to change the ritual practices and traditions of minorities that basically are considered as legitimate, there is a major chance that the groups in question will consider it as being hostile to religion and minorities. The risk in this case is particularly severe because the proposal don't affect the vast majority of boys and men in Norway today." End quote. It is not that long ago that female genital mutilation was deemed illegal in Norway. I am fairly certain that only a minority of girls in Norway were affected by that as well. Changing the ritual practices and traditions of minority religions is quite alright as long as it interferes with the genital integrity and bodily autonomy of girls. We don't need to worry about minorities getting pissed off then, you know. It only stands to reason. Obviously. Not in the least bit hostile to religious minorities when girls are saved. Only hostile to religious minorities when boys are saved. Got it. Also, mutilating baby boys is considered legitimate. Unnecessary surgery is legitimate where boys are concerned. Save the girls, use the rod on the boys. Chop chop babies, snip snip. Hope you will enjoy your further endeavors in this vast and beautiful world we have crafted for you. Quote, thirdly, there is a consequentialist dilemma in the case, in that using the law as a means to an end only has a point if it leads to changed behavior. The dangers of reactions from the affected groups, as mentioned above, is beside the obvious that it contributes to a poorer climate for cooperation and community, that the proposed change in law won't have any effect on the problem that is to be solved. In Sweden, which practices something akin to Proposal A, an evaluation done in 2005 showed that there were reason to believe that ritual circumcision still took place outside of the health services, done by people who had no permission to do so. The Ombudsman therefore urges the department in the work onwards to make sure to clarify the knowledge that is at the root of the concern, and that groups at the root of the concern is invited to participate in possible improvements that might contribute to reduce the real risk associated with circumcision of boys. End quote. Everything written above could just as well be used in regards to female genital mutilation. Every single argument in this gibbering stream of nonsense could just as well be turned on its head and used as an argument for the continued mutilation of female genitals. There is no reason to believe that ritual circumcision of girls have ended. It is just done with people with no permission to do so. It does not matter, of course, as girls need to be protected and boys need not be protected. Is this not clear fucking evidence that the government consider boys as lesser human beings than girls? Mutilation of boys is paid for by the public, done under the diamond-coated hammer of the government, whose fear of hurting the minorities is so grand and so virtuous that they see no qualms in hurting minorities when they save girls from mutilation. Double standards and hypocrisy is the words of the day when dealing with the supposed gender equality, whose department cares only for women and minorities and does not give two flying kerfluffled monkey butts about boys and men. Also worth noting is that the paper from which I have quoted is written and signed by two women. Usually, this would not matter to me. The reason I care now is that the feminists have been shouting and roaring and raging, demanding men don't have a say in anything regarding abortion. But women sure as hell feel entitled to talk about and decide whether or not the genitals of a boy should be mutilated at birth, or not. No uterus, no opinion? Okay, live by your own rules. No penis, no opinion. Or is that a sexist statement? Okay, live by your own rules then. I suppose it is okay as long as no minorities are hurt. The baby boys whose genitals are mutilated are sure as hell hurt, but that does not matter in the grand scheme and schism of things. As the feelings, the well-being, the pain of boys and men are unreal, unseen, unheard and unspoken. And no wonder that it is unspoken, when there even is a debate as to whether or not boys should be allowed to keep their genitals intact. No wonder that it is unspoken when concerns raised in regards to the well-being of boys and men are met by a department who sees no qualms in telling me that they are not interested in hearing from me anymore. The very same department that is put in place to make sure we have equality. Equality as long as it benefits anyone but boys and men of a majority persuasion. How strange and peculiar this magician's word equality is. How mystifying and metaphysical it is, being able to change shape and form at will to suit the pointy hats and curly toes of those whose job it is to decide what is or what is not equal, and who is not granted equal rights to their body and to their choices. The Department of Equality proves that it is a department of feminism, not egalitarianism. Made evident by the lack of concern for baby boys, whose genitals may be mutilated by professionals and non-professionals alike. As long as it is a minority religion and a minority of the population, it is alright and it ain't no thing. Made evident by the concern for baby girls, whose genitals may not be mutilated by neither professionals or non-professionals, as that would be trespassing on their goddess-given rights to a whole body and to intact genitals. Welcome, yet again, to the enlightened age of equality, where all are supposedly equal under the law, though some are exempt from the law and some are not. Leave your enthusiasm at the door and stab yourself in the groin with this pair of gardening shears, please. It'll save us the trouble later on. Welcome to the wonders of religious freedom, whose grasping God hands surpass the freedom of choice where boys are concerned, but whose grasping God hands may not touch the frail bodies of girls, for they are protected by law, even from the face and hands of God himself. What is to be done then? Well, make it illegal to mutilate baby genitals, period. It really should be as easy as that. When the boys and girls both are grown up and old enough, they may choose or they may not choose to have the procedure done. Consider this proof of their commitment to their religion of choice. I don't give two flying blabber-mouthed politicians' asses what adults choose to do with their own bodies, on their own money and in their own time. I do care, however, about babies who are completely unable to give consent to such a procedure and to religion at all, being mutilated for the benefit of their parents and their parents only. I do care about the blatant, goddamned double standards. They are so obvious that one has to be willfully blind to not see them, or one has to admit to having less empathy for baby boys in order to defend the position that it should be illegal to perform on girls, but legal to perform on boys. I don't care whether or not there are differences in the procedures. I don't care about the differences of a vagina and a penis. I don't give a rat's ass. Genital mutilation is genital mutilation, and completely unnecessary surgical procedures done without consent are completely unnecessary surgical procedures done without consent, no matter the gender of the victim or the reasons for the mutilations. One cannot claim equal treatment under law when one has written unequal treatment into law. One cannot claim gender neutrality in the laws of the land when the laws of the land are not gender neutral. This, of course, does not matter. The arguments are there. It is different, they say. No, it is not, I say. It is mutilating someone with no reason but ritual, but religion, but belief. It is removing parts of someone for no good reason. It is abuse of a child. Since January the 1st, 2015, the hospitals in Norway are demanded to perform the procedure if asked. Boys don't matter, and no one cares about this. I wonder what the outrage would be were the hospitals demanded to mutilate girls should the parents wish this. I wonder how many articles we would see then about this rampant misogyny, thus proof that we live in a culture that hates women, just hates them so much that they are mutilated by governmental permission. Since it is boys, however, we are scared to anger the minorities and hurt their feelings. And so we do not only allow this, we fund this. Because the well-being of the boy falls second to the well-being of the group which he belongs to. Because the boy, just as the man, is measured only by the sacrifices he makes for his community, not for his inherent humanity. The community is more important than the male, whereas the female is more important than the community. It is truly a tale old as time. It is the disposable and despicable male prototype rearing its head again from the vacuum of a society whose values progress only where it benefits women and minorities, whose gender roles only change for women and women only, whose lawful protection of body and of soul may be twisted and contorted as long as boys and men fall victim to the twists and turns. And we don't care about the sensitivity of the foreskin. That there is a significant loss of delicate and pleasurable sensation in the penis when the foreskin is removed. Please see link below. We don't care that it protects the glans, that it is an essential part of the male body. We don't care that it contributes to lubrication during sex, or that the glans hardens and sensitivity in the penis is lost after a circumcision. We don't care about the scar tissue, or the very simple fact that the foreskin is supposed to be there. We don't care that male infant foreskin is used in the production of cosmetics for women, as this horrifyingly misandrist article tells us, link below. I wonder what the reactions would be were there to exist shaving cream made for men from parts of the mutilated genitals of girls. Do you think the article linked would have the same wording then? Do you even think it would be legal? Not even the link found to sudden infant death syndrome seems to matter, see link below. Because it is only boys and boys only, and in this world in which boys and men are so privileged and so catered to, it does not matter that we mutilate them, that there is risks for infections and bleeding out, that their sexual pleasure is lessened, that we put them at risk for dying at a very young age. I could go on and on about circumcision, pointing out that John Harvey Kellogg proposed circumcision of boys to combat masturbation, thereby giving full credence to the thought that it is a concept created to attack the sexuality of men and make them suffer for it. Much the same, in fact, as the author of the article on the foreskin cosmetics lays down as a reason to not compare male genital mutilation with female genital mutilation. Of course, with the genders reversed. Controlling male sexuality is not a problem, because male sexuality is monstrous and primal and needs to be controlled by any means necessary. Controlling female sexuality, however, is a problem, as female sexuality is holy, saint-like, angelic, a chalice of healing, passed with much reverence to the lips of those who have proved themselves worthy. There is, quite simply, as stated time and again, a severe lack of empathy and understanding when it comes to boys and men. A lack of empathy so infused and ingrained in our societies that we do not see it, even as it stares us straight in the eyes, challenging us to attack its established dominance. The mere fact that mutilating boys is legal where mutilating girls is illegal should be evidence enough that we do not consider the pain and the body of boys and of men to be of as much importance as that of girls and women. It is sickening. It genuinely makes me feel sick to my stomach and has, more than anything else, contributed immensely to my insomnia. Lying awake at night pondering these things and trying to figure out how to put it into words, coherent, meaningful and beautiful, takes a good and solid chunk out of my sleep and out of my rest and of my emotional well-being. This piece is, by far, the most difficult and challenging piece I have written. I find it very difficult to detach from these issues, so prevalent and dominant as they are in the social madness of our societal psychosis. And try as we might, the message does not reach far enough. The lack of empathy, unseen, unsung, unheard, does not reach any levels of social awareness. Because the Church of Feminist Orthodoxy has decided that the only ones allowed to speak on behalf of gendered issues are A. feminism, and B. women. Even when the issues affect boys and men, they are the ones supposed to speak about it. A movement for women and women only are thus the only ones allowed in our collective psychosis to speak on issues affecting gender, even when they are not the gender affected by it. It is their insistence, coupled with the gynocentrism of our cultures, that they are the ones seeking equality, that they are the voice of God in regards to gender equality, that stifles the discourse, that makes the raising of issues regarding boys and men so incredibly difficult and so incredibly important at the same time. In order for the men's movement to be heard and seen, the noose tied around the neck and balls of society by feminism needs to be removed. We can no longer exist in this state of perplexed confusion, saying that women have it worse, so we must focus on women and on what the feminist cults say about gender, and disregard all other voices daring to speak on gender, labeling them as naught but backwards thinking conservative misogynists with a wish to chain women to the home so the men may be free to pillage, rape and ruin what is left of our societies with no repercussions. As a society, we need to remove the blindfolds placed upon us by the might of the feminist movement and its ideologues and prophets, and view gender and gendered issues from a position not tainted by this cult-like frenzied ideology, claiming equality for all and seeking only supremacy through phony victim tears and points. Boys being mutilated at birth does not matter, because something women worsting. I cannot for the life of me understand how we can view the concept of equality between the genders through a lens focusing solely on women, and claim that this is what will make us equal. We are lost in an alcohol-induced delirium, hallucinating wildly and rambling incoherently that the path towards equal treatment of all is to put the issues of women top, front and center, disregarding anyone else in the process. Or if not disregarding them, then trying to help them through a view of the world that sees men as the problem by virtue of nothing but being born with a penis that is to be mutilated as quickly as possible for no reason other than ritual, tradition and religion. To oppose feminism is not to oppose the concept of equality. To oppose feminism is to oppose a lack of empathy for boys and for men, a lack of empathy that sees men being sacrificed, or expected to sacrifice, so that women and children shall benefit from it. Women and children first, and the men be damned. To oppose feminism is not to oppose women. This should not be so difficult a concept to grasp, but there you have it. Opposing an ideology claiming to speak on behalf of all, when only speaking on behalf of a few representatives of half the population, sharing nothing but genitalia in common, is not opposing women. It is opposing a set of ideas built around men as oppressors and women as oppressed throughout eternity. It is opposing a set of ideas that has vengeance, retribution and a thirst for power, dominance and supremacy as the core of their values. A set of ideas that have managed to worm its way into the collective consciousness as the light of salvation, the only path able to lead us towards the exalted state of equality. That is, paradise regained through men doing penance for the perceived sins of their ancestors, which taint their own DNA and their own behavior, because feminism has said that it is so, and because of this it was so. Claiming allegiance to feminism, however, is opposing the very basic human rights of boys and men for no other reason than them being boys and men. I would argue that feminism is in opposition to women as well, as feminism constantly and chronically paint women as helpless infants unable to navigate the world on their own, constantly in need of help, demanding others drop whatever they are currently holding or doing in order to rush, all heroically and brave and stoic in shimmering armor, to the aid of women whose frailty and weakness is such that they cannot even handle air conditioning, or paying for dates, or taking the first step in a relationship, whose soft and frail nature is such that they cannot handle criticism without labeling it harassment. These are not my views, to be perfectly clear. These are the views spouted by feminist dogma, claiming strength and independence and showing naught but weakness and dependency. Women are so weak and so frail in the eyes of feminist dogma that they need the benevolent and all-seeing church of feminism to guide them on the path, to speak on their behalf and to tell them what to do or not to do. My own views, obviously simplified for convenience, are that women and men are complementary. My views are that women are completely capable of navigating the world and all its pitfalls just as men are, that men and women both have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and that it is through cooperation and mutual respect, that is, respect earned, not given, we will be able to grow, to overcome difficulties and function together in a shared space. Cooperation should be the unifier, not enmity and constant warfare. This, however, will not come to pass as long as the voices trying to bring sense into the discourse by stating the obvious. For example, that laws and rules and rights should be equal for all, and that with rights also come responsibilities, are shouted down as foul misogynists hating women by the same voices that, unashamedly, have nothing but contempt and hatred for men and for boys, future rapists, that they all of course are. And the stranglehold this cult has on the governments of our ailing societies is self-evident to anyone, even the feminists, who are fully aware of their power and are utilizing it cynically, who are utilizing it in manipulative ways by claiming women to be victims of everything and men to be the victims of nothing, claiming women to be the victims and men to be the victimizers, even when it is illegal to mutilate the genitals of girls, as it fucking should be, and legal to mutilate the genitals of boys, as it fucking should not be, in a society where we are supposed to be treated equally, regardless of gender and regardless of status. And as long as this unequal treatment is written into law, there is no equality between the genders. Because one is protected, and one is not. This is pure fucking common sense slapping you in the face with a rotting fish. The stench ought to fill your nostrils. Instead it is poo-pooed away as a non-issue, because the communities practicing this genital mutilation could have their feelings hurt by the obvious. That is, mutilating the genitals of babies just to mutilate the genitals of babies is wrong regardless of gender, oddly enough, and that their religious convictions do not trump the rights of their babies to not have their bodies mutilated, no matter the gender of the baby. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ramble as well as my other ramblings. Please consider sharing, liking, subscribing and all that jazz. That would help the message, such as it is, be manspread far and wide. Take a look at the links down below as well, if you please. Catch you next time.